notices a strange car parked in his driveway and assumes the owner is having an affair with his wife. As revenge, he fills the car with concrete, only to discover the car was a present from his wife. And this is a legend. They can't verify its truthfulness, but at the same time they can't verify that it's not true. And examples of this are a friend of a friend who is a ready-mix driver suspected his wife of infidelity. One day, he made sure that she thought he was going to be miles away, and then drove past his house. Sure enough, the bedroom curtains were drawn, and outside stood a brand new Triumph convertible. Sickened at this display of opulence, our driver had a brilliant idea on the spur of the moment. He drove round the block and prepared his load of cement. Then he returned, positioned his lorry, extended the chute, reversed the barrel, and filled the Triumph convertible with ready mix. As he packed it up to drive away, a foxy little man came out of his house, climbed onto a bicycle, and pedaled briskly away in the opposite direction. Another example of this legend is this one. Her favorite is about the woman whose husband drives a cement truck. She has saved for years to buy him a Cadillac convertible for their anniversary. The Cadillac is in the driveway, and she is negotiating with the salesman when her husband comes home. Seeing the flashy car and seeing his wife talking with a strange man, he dumps his load of cement into the convertible. And the variations on this story are: the husband does not always see his wife talking to a stranger. In some version, he suspects her of infidelity based solely on the strange car parked outside the house at midday. In some cases, the wife actually is having an affair, but the expensive car does not belong to her lover, as in the bicycle example I previously read. Origins of this story are: this familiar tale melts two elements in common to adultery legends. The spouse who receives poetic justice after unjustly suspecting a partner of unfaithfulness, and the revenge-seeking mate who ends up harming the wrong person by mistake. In his article, It Was a DeSoto, Louis W. Atbury writes about locating 3 articles that ran in the Denver Post on consecutive days in 1960. suspecting that the owner was getting even with him for winning a $20 bet. The driver dumped his load of wet mix into the left rear window of the owner's DeSoto. The owner, in turn, claimed he had called the concrete company 90 minutes earlier to cancel the order. Adbury notes, however, that the two men were friends, and that the whole incident might have been planned as a publicity stunt for the concrete company. The legend has been repeatedly told about Don Tyson of Tyson Foods Inc. In that version of the tale, Tyson's wife spots the Chicken King's expensive new Cadillac convertible parked in front of some other woman's house, calls a cement company, and has a truck come over to fill his car with concrete. In 1992, public relations folks at Tyson headquarters said the story was apocryphal, and they've been hearing it for 20 years, and that was last updated on January 7th, 2011. Now that was a short one, and this next one is a bit longer, but I'm not sure if it will take me to the link that I am aiming for. But we shall find out. So the next story is called Lorry, Hallelujah. And the claim is a diner who was picked on by some bikers at a coffee shop drives over their motorcycles on the way out. And just like the previous one, this is a legend. So some examples are, and this one is from 1986. A long-distance lorry driver went into an all-night cafe and ordered a meal of sausages, chips, and tea. He had just started his meal when 3 leather-jacketed youths came in and began to make fun of him. One picked up his mug of tea and drank it. Another ate one of his sausages. The third grabbed a handful of his chips. The driver said nothing, ate what they left him, paid his bill, and went out. One of the youths said to the cafe proprietor, "He wasn't much of a man, was he?" "No," said the proprietor, who was looking out of the window. "And he isn't much of a driver either. He's just backed his lorry into 3 motorcycles and wrecked them." And this example is from 1970, so a bit older than the last one. And it says, "What strikes me as an appropriate finale is the story of a cheerful truck driver who pulled up at a roadside tavern in the middle of the night for a spot of refreshment. Halfway through his dinner, three wild-looking motorcyclists roared up, bearded, leather-jacketed, filthy, with swastikas adorning their chests and helmets. For no reason at all, they selected the truck driver as a target. One poured pepper over his head. Another stole his apple pie. The third deliberately upset his cup of coffee. The trucker never said one word. Just arose, paid his check, then exited. "That palooka sure ain't much of a fighter," sneered one of the invaders. The man behind the counter, peering out into the night, added, "He doesn't seem to be much of a driver either. He just ran his truck right over 3 motorcycles." And the next example was collected in 1997, and it says, "I think the war between the smokers and the non-smokers is heating up a bit. I went into a restaurant for lunch the other day, and, as is my practice, requested a table in the no-smoking section. They seated me, and I went about the business of ordering and eating my food. Somewhere between the clam chowder and a club sandwich, I caught the smell of nearby burning tobacco. Upon looking around, I noticed the man in the booth next to me smoking a freshly lit cigarette. Overcoming my natural urge regarding confrontation, I spoke to the man. "Excuse me, sir, but when you came in, did you ask to be seated in the no-smoking section?" "Yes. I don't like the smell of smoke when I am eating any more than anyone else." I asked, "Then why are you smoking that cigarette?" "I finished eating." Silly me. It was obvious to the most casual observer. I called the server over and made her aware of the situation. She pointed it out to the man that he was smoking in a no-smoking section. I suspect this was not a startling revelation, and went away with his assurance that he was just leaving. Of course, he didn't leave until he had finished that cigarette and lit another. But at least he did finally out a small notebook, wrote something on a leaf from it, tore off the note, and placed it between the seat and the gas tank. His next action took me completely off guard. He looked straight in the window at me, then put his foot against the gas tank and shoved the motorcycle over on its side. He then spun around and ran smack into a very large, bearded fellow who apparently owned the Harley. That which ensued netted him at least one broken bone and hopefully a little jail time. After the police had come and gone, I helped the bearded gentleman ride his bike and noticed the note the man had left. I unfolded it and read, "This will teach you to mess with smokers' rights." I laughed and handed the note to the cigar-chewing biker. I then went around to the other side of the building, got on my BMW, and went back to work. Variations. Sometimes, as in the last example given above, the usual story is turned around into a tale of revenge gone wrong. The legend has been set in the United States, Canada, and Great Britain. And the origins of this story are: our earliest sighting of this tale of vehicular revenge was recorded in Indiana in the mid-1960s. In that version of the legend, a long-suffering trucker, outnumbered by his tormentors, finds an innovative way to get even for mistreatment suffered at their hands. He turns the instrument of how he makes his living into the instrument of his revenge. Though he might be out of his league on his own, once in his truck, he becomes a force to be reckoned with, who says bigger isn't better. In the related tale about smokers' rights, the desire to take revenge on another is again acted out on his property, not his person. Because in this story there is only one antagonist, and thus a direct confrontation was not ruled out by an imbalance of power. We view the bike kicker's behavior as cowardly. We cheer from the sidelines as he gets his from the behemoth who the motorcycle actually belongs to. The victim shies away from physical confrontation, choosing to attack his tormentor's most prized possessions instead of them. Contained within this action is the bit of advice this legend attempts to get across. Back away. discretion before valor, but get some of your own back once you have the upper hand. Rather than preach the Christian message of turn the other cheek, this legend suggests adopting a temporary posture of meekness, only to later strike back in a telling fashion once the advantage has shifted. Barbara Manual Transmission Mickelson sightings. This legend turns up in the plots of both the 1977 film Smokey and the Bandit and the 1978 film Every Which Way But Loose, and this was last updated on the 12th of March 2011. The next story we are going to read together tonight is called The $50 Porche. And the claim is: a man answers a classified advertisement offering an almost new Porche for the ridiculously low price of $50 and finds that the woman really is selling the car so cheaply because her husband ran off with a younger woman and asked her to sell him the car and send him the money. And this is a legend, just like the previous stories, so we can't verify its actuality. And so the examples are, and this one is from 1996. The Earl of Mowbray describes the adventure of a friend of his, a commander in the Royal Navy, who saw an ad in the Times offering a Rolls Royce in good condition for the price of $5. He instantly telephoned the offerer. A butler answered and put on her ladyship, the owner, who told him in complacent tones that indeed the car was for sale, and why didn't he come around to have a look? He did. The Rolls was in excellent condition, had less than 10,000 miles on the clock, and was waxed to a mirror finish. The owner was a middle-aged woman, obviously well off, showing no signs of unworldliness. After signing the appropriate papers and paying for and taking possession of the machine, he asked her how it came about she was letting it go for so little. Her husband had died recently, she said, and in a late codicil of his will, of which she was the executor, he had desired that his new Rolls be sold and the proceeds turned over to a certain Daisy with an address in the East End, a This is an example from 1979 from Ann Landers' column, and it reads, Dear Ann Landers, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I think this one is good enough to print. It tops the previous letters sent in by readers in support of your theory that truth is stranger than fiction. They backed you up by sending newspaper clippings of happenings no one would believe if they had appeared in your column. The last one, a news item from the Wisconsin State Journal, was about a 5-year-old boy who had been charged with rape. Here's a Lulu from your own backyard. The Chicago Tribune. A man in California saw an ad in the paper for an almost new Porche in excellent condition. Price $50. He was certain the printers had made a typographical error, but even at $5,000 it would have been a bargain. So he hurried to the address to look at the car. A nice-looking woman appeared at the front door. Yes, she had placed the ad. The price was indeed $50. The car, she said, is in the garage. Come and look at it. The fellow was overwhelmed. It was a beautiful Porsche, and, as the ad promised, nearly new. He asked if he could drive the car around the block. The woman said, of course, and went with him. The Porsche drove like a dream. The young man peeled off 50 and handed it over, somewhat sheepishly. The woman gave him the necessary papers, and the car was his. Finally, the new owner couldn't stand it any longer. He had to know why the woman would sell the Porsche at such a ridiculously low price. Her reply was simple. With a half smile on her face, she said, My husband ran off with his secretary a few days ago and left a note instructing me to sell the car and the house and send him the money. Still laughing and well met. And here is another example. This one is from 1993. And this one says, Jones noted an advertisement in the newspaper offering a current model Cadillac in prime condition for $50 cash. Certain it was a typographical error, he called the advertiser out of curiosity. To his astonishment, he found out that the advertisement was legitimate. The Cadillac was indeed brand new, and it was indeed in spit and polished condition. ownership was clear, and the price was indeed $50. The woman who was selling it calmly accepted the $5 bills he handed her, wrote him out a receipt, and handed him the keys. With the deal successfully concluded, Jones was driven by curiosity to ask, "But why is it, madam, that you have done this? This is a car worth many thousands of dollars. How can you accept 50? It's quite simple," said the woman, placing the bill of sale and the money in her purse. "My husband died shortly after buying this car, and in his will he directed that I sell it and that the proceeds go to his mistress." And variations of this story are: the other woman is sometimes an unspecified younger woman rather than the husband's secretary. Early versions of this story involved a husband who left instructions in his will for his wife to sell the car and give the proceeds to his mistress. This story was originally set in England, but now the incident is usually related as having taken place in California, presumably as a representative of a place where men own sports cars and run off with younger women. Origins of this story are: the version of this legend in which the wife is directed to sell the car by her husband's will has circulated in England since at least 1948 and is sometimes claimed to have originated with an actual event printed in English newspapers that year. The husband ran off with his secretary. Version of this legend was reported as true in Ann Landers' column of 4 November 1979, sent in by a reader who claimed to have seen it in the Chicago Tribune. Even though Anne admitted that no one at the Tribune could locate a copy of the article, she stated that the incident did happen as reported and was a news story somewhere. Ann Landers ran the piece again with the same claim of veracity, and her 24 August 1990 column, even though Brun Van had covered it and her reporting of it in The Vanishing Hitchhiker 9 years earlier. In any form, it's a neat little revenge tale, even if a bit implausible. If you were going to run away from your spouse, wouldn't you take your car, especially an expensive one, with you? And if you found someone who was selling a like-new, expensive car for a ridiculously cheap price, would you really wait until after the transaction was completed wrong with it, so I wouldn't. I'd just pass her the 50 and say, here you go, thanks. Sorry, to back to the story. In June 2005, either an act of ostension or yet another prank engineered by a man with a taste for them played out in the British press. According to This Is London, the £25,000 car belonging to controversial disc jockey Tim Shaw of Kerrang 105.2 was sold by his wife, Haley Shaw, for 50 pence on eBay. After the TJ announced during a live interview with model Jody Marsh that he was prepared to leave his wife and 2 children for her. Either a fed-up wife found inspiration in a decades-old urban legend, or a shock job is up to much more of the usual. Sightings of this legend are a gender-switched version of this legend shows up in Judith Van Gyson's 1993 novel, The Lies That Bind. If you prefer it the more traditional wife nails errant husband way, you'll find that in the 1996 film First Wives Club, a 1998 TV commercial for Route 66 jeans, and an episode of television's Alice from the 1982 to 83 season Mel's Dream Car. A version involving a record collection instead of a car appears in Nick Hornby's 1995 novel High Fidelity. John McCutcheon's 1989 song The Red Corvette is a telling of this legend, and the song is here as follows. One morning while reading the paper, in search of a new set of wheels, the classifieds had a most curious ad in their listing of automobiles. I read in suspicious amusement what seemed like a wild stroke of luck. Corvette Stingray, right? It said, low mileage, bright red, 83 model, $65. I was used to my newspaper's typos. Still, I called up that number straight away. About that 83 vet, have you sold that thing yet? She said, no, you're my first call today. I said, there's been some mistake in the paper. They've printed the price wrong somehow. Oh no, replied she, they got that from me. I said, don't sell that thing, I'm leaving right now. Her address was in part of the city where I'd ventured just one time or two. just $65 away. The interior was done in white leather. It had a 587 V8, gold wingspan doors, first four on the floor, and the 8-channel tape deck was great. There was chrome on the fenders. An aerodynamic design. A bar, a TV, and it was boggling to me that for $65 it was mine. Now I expected that this woman was crazy to sell off the car at that price. But as we walked down the lane, she seemed perfectly sane. She was charming and really quite nice. And she smiled in such great satisfaction as she handed me title and keys. I said, I've just got to know why you've let this thing go. What's wrong with this car? Tell me, please. She said, I'll be 60 come Tuesday, and I've lived here with my husband, Earl. Well, after 30 years wed, and without a word said, he left me for a young teenage girl. But with his credit cards left here behind him, I knew that he couldn't get far. Last night from Florida, he sent a wire to me. Said, I need money, dear, sell the car. And this one was last updated on July 3rd, 2007. And that's it for this episode. It is quite a bit longer than I expected it to be, but that is okay, because hopefully you will find it relaxing if you're not already asleep by now. So I'm gonna end this one